Update. I've female 25 returned from a month-long trip, and my roommate, female 22, has moved all her things into my room and has been living there with no intention of switching back. Original post. So I moved into this flat about 8 months ago. I met Lana online on her roommate's website, and we clicked well. She's a bit younger, but seemed mature. We quickly agreed to be roommates as both of us were under time constraints to find a place to live, but have got on really well so far, up until this. Our flat is a 2-bedroom, and to be frank, my room is clearly the better one. It's bigger and has built-in wardrobes. When looking for the flat, I found a place first on my own and put down a deposit to take it off the market while I found another roommate. The flat was perfect. Cheap rent, and my aunt manages the property, so I was keen to snap it up before anyone else did. The area it's in is popular, so I wasn't really worried about not finding someone to room with. Because of the above and that I was there first, I took the bigger room naturally. When showing potential roommates, including Lana, round, I was sure to show the smaller room and say this would be your room. We moved in 8 months ago. It has been happy families. Never heard Lana complain about her room. Because I have about 6 times the wardrobe space that she does, I told her she's welcome to store her off-season clothes in there, or whatever she wants to store, as long as she's not popping in every morning to get dressed. She was happy with us. But just over a month ago, I went traveling. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of having people in my room, but I told Lana if she had someone stay, her sister's friends from home, they could sleep in my bed. She said thanks, and as she's been such a great roommate and rarely has guests except her boyfriend, I didn't worry at all. I came back yesterday. I was exhausted from the flight and traveling, and just wanted to shower and sleep. As I walked in, Lana was in the living room with her boyfriend. We said hello and hugged, had a very quick catch-up, blah blah. Then I dragged my suitcase to my room, opened the door, and found it full of stuff that was not mine. I kind of yelled, "What the hell?" and briefly thought I was so jet-lagged I was confused, but opened the door to Lana's room and saw all my stuff. I walked into the living room and asked Lana what was going on, and she said, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. We put my stuff in your room just because it's bigger and you weren't here and you said I could use it." I was honestly so tired I could have passed out then, so I probably wasn't in the best state, and told her to move it all back immediately. She said they were in the middle of making dinner and I looked tired, so I should have some sleep. Her boyfriend then said, "And anyway, you pay the same rent, so isn't it fair that you both get a big room at some point?" I was getting really frustrated, and I could feel tears welling up, hysterical from lack of sleep, so I just said, "We'll deal with this tomorrow, and it's getting moved back." And then I went to sleep in not my room. I've woken up now, and I'm so pissed off. Lana's at work, so I can't talk to her. But what should I do when she's home? I feel like this is going to turn into an argument, and I don't think it'll be as simple as, "Okay, let's swap now that you're home." Now for the top comments before reading the first update. She moved your things out when you weren't there. You're off work now. Just swap things back straight away. Start with stripping the beds and changing the linen over. I wouldn't leave it till tomorrow. It normalizes the situation. If she comes home whilst you're in the middle of it, just keep going or ask her to help you. Her boyfriend should keep out of it. I assume he's lived there full-time over the last month and is seeing it as their flat now. Yep, this is my worry. I still paid rent for this month I was away, so I have every right to return to the same flat as I left. 3 separate points here. 1. They shouldn't have touched your stuff or moved rooms. Reverse that while they're at work. Just do it right now. Also, get a lock. 2. An even rent split with uneven rooms isn't fair. Even she has no room to complain because she knew that going in. If you want good relations going forward and to be the bigger person, perhaps decide what is a fair rent split and propose this to her when she gets back. 3. Boyfriend isn't supposed to live here and isn't paying anything. Does he now? Time to nip that in the bud. Move your stuff back. This isn't even a discussion. You found a place. You made it clear the smaller was her room. Put a lock on the door and say this isn't a discussion. It sucks she screwed herself over, but that's her problem, not yours. Edit. Also, if the boyfriend has been staying over all the time, nip that in the bud. You signed up for 1 housemate, not 2. If he cares so much, he can go rent a place with her. Be upfront and tell her in the future she needs to A. Ask because you didn't give her permission to your room, and B. If she wasn't happy with the deal, she should have said something or not rented a place, not this weird passive-aggressive show of dominance. I plan on having a calm discussion with her, and her alone. If she fights me on moving the room back, I'll do it while she's at work and put a big lock on the door. I don't want to do it this way, but she's been so sneaky and passive about this that I'm not putting up with it. The boyfriend generally isn't around too much as mine is at least. It's never bothered me before, but I think he's just finished uni, so he's probably been here a lot since he left school. She's been a dream to live with up until now, which is why I'm leaning towards this being the boyfriend. I'm going to talk to her about it and hopefully resolve it, but this matter isn't flying with me. Just do it. Just move your stuff back. ASAP. She's already convinced that her getting the big room is fair because you both pay the same amount, and you're not talking her out of it anytime soon. So move your stuff and put the lock before she comes back, and before she's the one that puts the lock. This is simple. You don't need to have a discussion with her. While she's at work, move your stuff back to your room. Take her off-season clothes out of your closet and install a lock. If she had an issue about the price she's paying or the size of her room, she should have negotiated that during the contract signing. Also, do not allow a third party, her boyfriend, who does not live there, dictate or comment about anything to do with that apartment. To be honest, your roommate sounds like a crappy person and opportunist under that niceness. Anyone who would move all of someone's stuff out of their room is not nice. Edit. I've taken the advice of most people on this thread and moved my stuff back. It's taken hours and I'm knackered, but I think if I left it another night it would be a real problem. I sent her a text when I was almost done, in case she kicked up a storm and came home, to say, "Hi Lana, hope you're having a nice day at work. Just to let you know I'm moving my stuff back into my room. Didn't want you coming home and walking into the wrong one. Yes, I'm petty. I'll be talking to her when she gets in because this is out of character for her, to the point of it being bizarre. She's never been anything but a model roommate, so I'm gonna give her a chance before we're donezo. If she wants to be reasonable and have a chat about rent portions, I'm happy to do that. She's never had a problem with the rent before. And honestly, I've never had uneven rent amounts in any place I've ever lived, whether I had a bigger room or smaller room. But a lot of people here are saying it's the norm, so I'm open to talking about it if she's not ridiculous. Edit 2. Lana should be home in a bit. I'll update when I can. And now for the first update. Hi everyone. I've got about 1 million messages asking for an update, but last night was a bit mad and I'm still pretty jet-lagged, so sorry but I went to sleep. Anyway, here we go. So as you know, I texted Lana to tell her I moved my stuff back. She didn't reply to me. Fine, whatever. But she didn't kick off, so I figured we were okay. I told my aunt what had happened, who was as baffled as all of you, and I told her it was probably all sorted, just keeping her in the loop. I also told my boyfriend who works about 5 minutes down the road. He offered to come around, in case Lana's boyfriend came around, but I told him not to because then we're ganging up on Lana. He insisted on going for a coffee with his mate a couple of roads away in case we needed backup, which is a bit ridiculous, but very cute of him. So I did get myself a glass of wine while waiting for Lana, not because I was nervous, I just like wine, and she came home. I was sat in the living room and gave her a very cold hi when she walked in. She sort of froze, bag in hand, and her eyes darted between me and my/not her/our bedroom door. She blurted, "Did you do it?" And I said, "What, moved her rooms back?" "Yeah, of course." And her eyes went all wide, and she dropped her bag and ran into the bathroom. I could hear her talking on the phone. So I was like, yippee, I guess Tom's coming around. Fun. I heard the door unlock, and I was about to go full Hulk on how psycho she is when she came out the door and stood between our bedrooms. Their doors are adjacent, and she just stared between them both, breathing heavily. It was really odd. Then I noticed she was crying and getting a bit panicky, so I asked what was going on. She burst into tears and said, "Oh my god, he's going to kill me," and just sobbed. So yeah, it was the boyfriend's idea completely, as a lot of us suspected. She's honestly always been a perfect roommate, which is kind of why I came to the sub. If she was generally Nehal, I would have known how to act, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Lana has a bit of a breakdown, and it turns out POS Tom has always been a bit of a POS. Very jealous, which I always saw hints of, but Lana never mentioned, so I didn't. It has amped up his POS-ishness while I've been away. When I left, he just finished school, and basically moved in and announced. And when she'd mentioned he hasn't been home in days, he'd give her the, "What, don't you love me? I treat you so well. You're so selfish, blah blah, crap," and refused to move. She showed me the text he sends her. Absolutely horrific stuff. Things like, "Ring me in the next 5 minutes or we're over. Send me a picture of you at your desk with something showing today's date so I know you're at work." Just abusive stuff. onto the room. As we guessed, he moved it. He did it while she was at work, which is actually a bit gross thinking of him going through my stuff. And I'm considering somehow implying he have crabs or something he could catch just to make him squirm a bit. But I'll work on it. Lana came home and asked what he was doing, and he made it out it was just temporary and that I wouldn't mind. Such a gentleman speaking on my behalf, and he would move it back. And that he was doing it for her and she was so selfish, etc. When it got a few days before I came back, Lana suggested moving it back, and he completely denied he said that, and told her it was her idea to move it. But he only did what she told him, but it's staying now, or she'd be sorry. So basically, Tom is a prick. And Lana sobbed and apologized and cried, and I fed her wine. She didn't want to see Tom, who obviously assumed he lived there now. So I texted him from her phone saying our landlady, my aunt, was coming around for an inspection and staying for dinner after with my family, and he couldn't come over tonight. He sent a lot of begging, whiny texts, and then went on the offensive and called Lana a liar. So I rang my aunt, explained everything, and had her write us a fake landlord email mentioning the visit and how she was looking forward to fajitas because she's an absolute babe and I make good packet fajitas, which we forwarded on to Tom, and left her alone for the rest of the night, apart from a few texts. I'm not entirely sure what we'd do about Tom. Lana sounds like she wants to break up, judging from her crying and screaming, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him into her wine. I think she's scared too though. I checked with her and he doesn't have a key, so that's a relief. I've told my aunt everything and she said she's happy to ban him from that flat, but Lana would need to break up with him first and get all that sorted. Thanks everyone for the advice. I know it wasn't the most popcorny update, but hopefully Lana will be okay, and we're going to be doing some girly stuff this week at avoiding Tom. And yeah, God knows what will happen. And now for the second update. Hi everyone. It's been a busy month since my last post, and I logged back into this account out of curiosity and saw quite a few people message me requesting an update. So here we are. Sorry it took so long, but things have calmed down now. So shortly after my last post, Lana broke up with Tom. She was quite scared to do it because he's a psycho, and it took 2 weeks between the last post and the actual breakup. During that time, she didn't let him come around or see her. Luckily, she remembered that Tom had never had chickenpox as a kid, so we pretended my nephew had caught chickenpox and had to stay with us because my brother's wife had never had it and couldn't risk getting shingles. It worked luckily, and he stayed away. She told her family and close friends about what it'd been like, in case he contacted them to get in touch with her and lied about what happened, and then texted him saying she wanted to break up. Well, he blew the hell up. Called her every name under the sun, switched back to apologizing and saying she was the love of his life, then said she'd never find someone like him, then he would die without her, then he wanted to end her, and then they were soulmates. It was insane. He started messaging me too, telling me I was an evil witch who had ruined his perfect wife. Lol, okay then. And as predicted, her family and friends got messages too. We both turned our phones off to ignore it and just watched TV. Later, I briefly switched mine on, where I had a lot of messages from my friends telling me to block some guy in my social media. It was Tom calling me every imaginative combination of the C word he could think of all over my public Instagram page. There were even a few racial slurs, which was odd because we're both white, but okay. Lana had already blocked him and everything, but silly me forgot to make my Insta private. The next day, he rang Lana's office. She was so embarrassed, it was awful, to tell her he was driving down to our flat. She rang me and I rang my aunt, who you remember manages the property, who told us it was time to call the police. We filed a report about Tom. They said to update us on the situation. In the UK, you need to go to court to actually get a restraining order, so we have it as such. But the evidence is all there and documented if we need to go that far. The police rang Tom, at our request, told him they'd seen the messages and to turn his car around, because if he turned up at our door, he'd be arrested. Police officers here are amazing, can I just say. Tom managed to poop himself hard enough to not show up after that. So we were fine for a week. Then the post came. Tom started sending letters, threats and soppy I love you stuff, flowers, then a pizza that we had to pay for. We were actually hungry, so we ate it. He even signed us up to a magazine subscription. It was bizarre. We went to the police again. They filed everything, but Lana didn't want to go to court. I don't blame her as she was incredibly stressed by the whole thing. So 2 weeks ago, I took my aunt and my mother out to dinner. I told them both about the situation, and my god, as if an aunt had an idea. She manages about 30 properties, not just the one we live at, as I had a few that were unoccupied now, with school finishing. She told me she would show us around all the 2 bedrooms she had, and we could live in any of them for the same rents we pay now, and just transfer over our deposit/fees as long as there were no damages to deduct and we helped do a deep clean to get it ready for the next tenant. We found one within a 5-minute drive that's just as lovely, and to anyone concerned about the previous rent dispute, has equal-sized bedrooms. So we moved, which is why the last 2 weeks have been manic, but we're settled in now. Tom has been informed that we've moved, because the stuff he sent since has been returned. Lan and I are completely no contact with him, and anyone who visits us is sure not to pass on our address to Tom. Also, I apologized to Lan about the issue with paying the same amounts of rent. She said she never had a problem with it, and said that that's how she had always done it through uni and with other roommates. She refused to take any money from me, but I've decided I will be funding the weekly flat wine sessions for the future. It's been a long month, and even though my traveling tan has faded, things are great now. Thanks for all your advice before, guys, even the ones I didn't agree with, and let's all pray to baby Jesus that I have a calmer living situation from now on. Wow, what a fantastic outcome for everyone involved. I mean, obviously trauma from Tom's idiocy and harassment, but now that Nitwit is on police notice, you and Lana have a nice new flat with equal footing. And it sounds like you've formed a real bond over this, whereas your previous post was typical roommate entitlement issues combined with a crap boyfriend. It both escalated and got better. Much luck to you and Lana living in the future. You've been a great friend to her. Your aunt definitely deserves some good wine sessions too. We're taking my aunt out for dinner next month. This update was so satisfying to read. You guys did great. I cracked up when I read a magazine subscriptions part. Dude was a loon. You were a really good egg in this situation. I'm glad it's turned out for the best. Thank you. I'm so happy it's all calmed down now.
Update. Grown man ruining my son's life. Please help me ruin his. Original post. I'm living in hell right now and need ideas. My son just turned 18 and is disabled. He needs and takes multiple medications and requires support at school. He does well in some settings and is on track to graduate and pursue trade school with support, and we're so proud of him. He is extremely impressionable, a little socially awkward, and desperate for friends. For years we've struggled because he gives away his possessions, gets into bad situations, like someone offering to sell him rocks at a park, him thinking they're collectible gemstones, only to freak out when he realizes they're drugs, and is easily bullied. He will do anything to be liked, which breaks my heart. We're working on this in therapy and with trusted adults, but it's a slow process. Now onto the grown man. This guy is 28 years old. Let's call him Quentin. He's frequently homeless, often sleeping in a tent in parks. Occasionally, he gets a voucher from our city to stay in a motel. He has 2 pit bulls, neither spayed or neutered, which he leaves in a tent or motel room when he works his fast food job. I have compassion for his situation, but not when it involves my son. It started with Quentin asking my son to watch his dogs in the park while he worked. My son, thrilled to have a friend and eager to help, agreed. He loves animals, so he'd spend 8+ hours a day or night alone in a park watching these dogs. He began asking if he could take dog food, toys, and blankets from our house for Quentin's dogs. At first we said yes because I appreciated that he wanted to help the dogs. But when we said no, he started taking things anyway. Things escalated a few months ago when Quentin told my son that now that he is 18, he didn't have to stay with us and could stay with him instead. For weeks, my son was sleeping in a tent with Quentin and the dogs or roughing it in the park. Quentin gave him beer and weed. My son would watch the dogs for entire shifts while Quentin worked. Quentin even told him he'd help him get a tent and vouchers too. The police are sympathetic, especially because of my son's disabilities and medical issues, but he's 18. The school is supportive, but with graduation approaching, there's only so much they can do. And again, he's legally an adult. We never pursued medical conservatorship because things were going relatively well before now, and we don't take removing civil liberties lightly. In the past week, Quentin got another motel room and messaged my son to come stay with him. My son went. He sat in a room watching the dogs while Quentin worked, likely smoking and drinking when Quentin was home. My son responded to our texts, but insisted he's an adult and can go where he wants. During this time, he missed a week of medication, school, part of his part-time job, and an important medical appointment. Being Quentin's friend has taken priority. He feels good helping Quentin. It even said, "Quentin is like a brother to me. He's the best brother I've ever had." Quentin's own family has kicked him out. They are nearby but clearly done with him. No idea who watches the dogs when my son isn't available. Earlier this week, my son gave Quentin his bike, saying he needs it more than me. My son came home yesterday in a complete psychiatric crisis from being unmedicated and likely high and or drunk. His medical issues were also exacerbated. He was banging his head on a concrete floor, and when we called emergency services, he spit at the police. So they restrained him and put a spit hood on him. It was horrific and he was begging for help. We're unsure when he'll be stable enough to come home and may need a medical procedure. He was coherent today, crying and apologizing, but remains 100% certain Quentin is his friend. I feel terrible because at 18, it's normal for him to start building his own life and friendships. I look forward to that day. He does have other, more age-appropriate friends, but they have busier lives and responsibilities. They aren't available 24/7. Quentin is, and my son loves the feeling of being needed when his phone pings with a message from his friend. How can I make this man's life miserable, or at least make it too uncomfortable or risky for him to keep hanging with my son? Important note, I do not want to harm or stress the dogs. It's not their fault, and my son would never forgive me. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Intervene now, before Quentin gets your son on a path of using harder drugs. Because everything about this situation screams that's where the situation is headed. Intervention in a serious way should have been executed way before this. Even sending the boy to live with distant relatives and blocking Quentin's number on any phone. This is heartbreaking and no good can come of it. Sounds like you might need to pursue medical conservatorship, which I know you don't want to do, but it sounds like you definitely have grounds, and it's the lesser of two evils at this point. I don't see things ending up well without intervention. Thank you for this, and others who prompt me to reconsider conservatorship. I called a lawyer on Monday. I had already done research and collected that info, but had a lot of hope that once sheltered work started up and he had less free time, it might not be necessary. Pay someone to be your son's friend that's more of a caretaker? Honestly, this guy sounds at the very least like a scammer. Sometimes the only way people into deep in one scam is a second scam. It's sad, but there's literally a bot on r/scams for recovery scams. Basically, people promising to recover your loss for some fee. It's not great, but if you could afford someone to offer better friendship and then point out that his old friend is lame, it'll be like positive peer pressure. Maybe help the person could help them join appropriate opportunities for new friendship, then phase out. This is another great idea, and I appreciated the comments below it here in the thread. I have reached out to some young adults older than him that might serve as mentors or fitness coaches. Hang out with him, work out, play basketball. Build positive connections with people who don't wish him ill. Thank you for this. I have a few possibilities here in our area. Update. A few months ago, I came here asking for tips to help get a man named Quentin out of my son's life. I'm super grateful for all the ideas and the many kind words. As of today and for the last 3 months, my son is happy and healthy. We found a transitional living house for him with 5 other young men and 2 house managers and a dog. He's learning how to adult, cooking, cleaning, and preparing for a job. The program includes therapy, daily gym sessions, yoga, skateboarding. Truly a dream come true. The house is about 40 minutes away from where Quentin lives. My son now feels he has friends, a sense of purpose, and independence. He's busy and learning so much, and the program also includes job training. Before this happened, I followed as much of your advice as I could. I contacted the manager at Quentin's workplace and the motel he occasionally stays at. I told them Quentin was allowing a disabled teenager to stay with him and was giving him, and other teens, alcohol. The manager, a local small business owner, took my information seriously. I also went to the motel and pointed out the sign stating all guests must have ID, which my son does not. I reminded the manager of this policy and said I'd contact corporates if it wasn't being followed. I also started calling the non-emergency police line when Quentin was camping at a park after closing hours or leaving his dogs unsupervised during the day. The police would move him along. Someone gave me the brilliant advice to become Quentin's best friend and show up all the time. So I did. If Quentin wanted to see my son, he got to see me too. I showed up at the park, at his work, and near the motel. I even prepared flyers to distribute around the neighborhood, informing residents about the tent, the camping, and the unsupervised, unneutered pit bulls near the playground. Quentin became increasingly upset. He accused me of stalking him and said he was going to call the police. I politely encouraged him to do so, telling him I'd love to share more with the authorities about what he was doing with my son and other vulnerable young people. I told him, if you want to be in my son's life, I'll be in yours. It's up to you. I felt so bold after all your advice and encouragement. I was ready for the long haul. In the meantime, we found a lawyer and tapped into resources to find my son some job training since he genuinely wants to feel grown up and helpful. Through a local agency, he worked for a few weeks at a drugstore, stocking, cleaning, and assisting customers. It kept him busy and gave him confidence, which slowly started pulling him away from Quentin. Eventually, Quentin either got sick of seeing me or became worried about losing his job. The motel he stayed at stopped letting him stay, forcing him to use another location much farther away. With a longer commute to work and more obstacles, he must have decided my son wasn't worth the trouble. He stopped contacting him altogether. Thank you so much for all your ideas. As his mom, I was so focused on fixing things from my son's perspective that I didn't know how to deal with Quentin effectively. Your advice was invaluable. A huge thank you from the mom of a happy, healthy, busy, and purposeful young adult son. Glad it worked out for you and your son. You did great and are a much better person than I am. I would not have handled it as well and would have done some bad things to keep him away. Great mother, and hope this progress continues for you and your son. Good for you. You made a difference where so many fail. My son needs the same program. Please share it with me so we can save him too. You remind me of my mom and the lengths she took to keep her kids happy and safe. She died 24 years ago now on September 29th, 2000. The trajectory of my life would have been vastly different if I had her in my life instead of her dying while I was young. I think anyone should be immensely proud to have you as their parent. Maybe Quentin would have ended up different if they had someone like you as their parents and role model, but who knows? This comment has me crying. So kind of you, and thank you for the comparison to your mom. I'm so glad you had her. Last story. Update. My husband and I took in my best friend and her 3 young children, and I'm regretting it. Original post. My 30 female best friend, 29 female, recently lost her husband, home, car, and all sources of income. Her husband suddenly passed away, and he was the only one working while she stayed at home with their 1-year-old twins and 4-year-old. They had nowhere to go, so it took them in until she can save up enough to get an apartment. There was no life insurance. My husband isn't happy that they are here. He has told me that he does not like my friend at all, claiming that she has taken me away from him and taken over his home. He is paranoid that she is stealing our things when we aren't home and wants to put locks in our bedroom and office doors, as well as install cameras in those rooms. Today, my friend went into our bedroom to smoke a cigarette in our patio and take a moment to herself away from her kids while we weren't home. She called me to let me know she was going out on a patio, but my husband started freaking out when I told him. Now, he says he feels like he needs to get an apartment because he doesn't feel safe and feels like he no longer has a space in our home where they don't have access. It breaks my heart that he hates my friend so much when she hasn't done anything wrong. She's just going through one of the toughest times in her life. But I don't know if I'm being too trusting of my friend and inconsiderate of his feelings, or if he's being too paranoid. Now for the top advice before reading the update. I think there needs to be discussion of a timeline for when she is leaving. He agreed to take her in the short term. At least that is the impression I got reading this. so he needs to chill a bit about them living in his space. That being said, suddenly having another woman he doesn't like and 3 kids in the house is understandably not awesome. I think the solution is to set a timeline for when she is leaving. Help her find a place as her friend, but stick to the timeline. And set some boundaries about what areas of the house she and her kids have access to and which are off limits. Just because someone is staying at your house doesn't mean they get to treat it like it's their house. The husband is right for not wanting Opie's friend in their bedroom, bathroom, and office. If she can't show immediate respect for that, she needs to be kicked to the curb. I'm sure she'll feel much more confined and restricted at a shelter. Your friend is taking advantage of you and she needs to go. How is she contributing? Is she keeping the house clean? Is she cooking some meals? Paying for some groceries or chipping in for utilities? Understandable that her situation is sad, but this isn't your or your husband's responsibility. You did a nice thing and she's taking it for granted. I guarantee this is going to put a strain on your marriage. It sounds like it has already. It's not your responsibility to take care of somebody else's family. I would tell her she has a set amount of time and stick to that. It might hurt your friendship, but you need to decide what's more important. Friendship versus marriage. She is not taking us for granted at all. She keeps the house clean, cleans up after herself and her children, has assistance for groceries and diapers, waiting to get approved for other assistance. This is the only problem we've had with her in the month she's been here. Her situation is heartbreaking, especially for her 3 children. If it was just her, we would have said no. My husband and I were on the same page with letting her stay. We agreed to 8 months, but I do agree that we need to set a specific move-out date. Maybe I'm a mean friend, but I'd never allow a friend to stay with my husband, our kids, and I. There's a boundary that you don't cross. Why didn't she have any single friends to help her? Because every person she went to said no to helping them, just like everyone else on this Reddit post said they do. My husband and I could not in good conscience let our babies be homeless. Now 40 updates a month later. This update is a few weeks overdue, but a lot has happened. It's hard to fit every single detail of a situation into one post, especially while trying to respect my friend's privacy during such a rough time. However, I took a lot of your advice. I apologized to my husband and asked him what boundaries he needed and what changes were necessary for him to feel more comfortable. We had this conversation before my friend moved in, but things turned out so differently than expected. I realized I was putting my friend before my husband, and it was a harsh wake-up call. My husband wasn't thinking about leaving me, but he was definitely unhappy. I'm glad we had this talk because being on the same page has made us both a lot happier. We sat down and talked to my friend, and it went great. She apologized for going into our bedroom when we weren't home, admitted it was unacceptable, and promised it would never happen again. I told her the bedroom and study were off limits, no exceptions. I also made it clear that her children needed to keep their toys in the playroom we set up for them and not spread them all over the house. She completely agreed to all of this. We changed the locks on the bedroom and study doors, added cameras, and installed a safe for valuables. Most importantly, we told her she needed to find a job and arrange daycare for her children as soon as possible, with a hard deadline of April 1st. She took the whole conversation really well and admitted that she needed this push to move forward and build a life for herself and her kids. 5 days later, she got a job and found daycare for her children. The energy in the house has completely shifted. My husband and I are spending more time alone together in our home, and all of our boundaries have been respected. To everyone who said they'd never take in a friend and her 3 kids, that's exactly why she had nowhere else to go. Everyone else said no. It's been rough on all of us, but my husband and I are now confident in our decision to help her, especially now that we both feel heard and respected. My husband has also worked on his anger toward my friend and feels more at ease interacting with her and coexisting in the same space. It helps that he sees she's taking our rules and deadlines seriously and acting accordingly. Reddit obliterated me, and while I don't agree with kicking her out, I appreciate the brutal honesty that helped me realize I wasn't backing my husband the way I vowed to. When I was young, my parents took in my dad's coworker whose husband had left her. Initially, she could stay as long as she needed, but eventually they did the same thing and said they needed to see her working towards getting back to being independent. She was in the Air Force with my dad at a time, so she had good options. Still a lifelong friend. Love this successful story, even though it wasn't all great all the time. Makes me hopeful that our friendship will continue for another 10 years after this. Thank you for sharing. I think you handled this great, and wow, so wonderful you can help your friend and the 3 kids. It takes one person to make a difference in someone's life. If my extra room can make a huge impact on their lives, then absolutely let them use it. But boy, have boundaries and house rules made things so much tolerable, lol. Update. Am I the a-hole for going behind my wife's back and telling her pregnant sister that she's being cheated on? Original post. I have been married to my wife for 3 years. I'm 27 and she is 26. My sister-in-law is 30 and my brother-in-law is 31. I've always had a close relationship with my sister-in-law. We're friends. I also have a decent connection with my brother-in-law, though we're not that close. We often talk and get along. My wife and her sister haven't gotten along as well as you might expect siblings do. It's not just normal sibling rivalry, but rather constant fights and arguments. Anyway, 3 weeks ago, when I was having dinner with my friends, I saw my brother-in-law with another woman. They were just eating, and I didn't think much of it. I wanted to go and greet him, but I stayed with my friends. After a while, I saw him give this woman a light kiss. I was so shocked. I decided not to confront him, but when I got home, I told my wife everything. I told her that her sister was being cheated on and that we needed to tell her. My wife said we should talk to my brother-in-law instead of telling her sister and that we shouldn't break up their marriage because her sister is pregnant. I was like, what? So what if she's pregnant? Her husband is cheating. I tried multiple times to convince my wife that we should tell her sister the truth. I told her, I know you guys don't get along, but she's still your sister, and this isn't right. But my wife asked me to stay out of it. I tried my best to convince her, but she either ignored me or insisted that we should break up their marriage. I had enough, and yesterday I told her that I was going to tell my sister-in-law the truth. She and I have a great bond, and I can't and won't betray her. My wife then said that if I told her, she wouldn't talk to me anymore. I replied, I won't talk to you either if you refuse to do what's right. Today, I went to my sister-in-law's place and told her everything. At first, she was doubtful and asked me to leave. After a few hours, she called me crying and said that what I told her was true. She apologized for doubting me and told me she was leaving. I asked her, where will you go? Do you have money? She said she did, but not much. I wired her some money and told her to call me if she needed help. She thanked me and said she would only use the money if necessary and would return what she didn't need. My brother-in-law called my wife and my wife lashed out at me, saying I ruined her family and her sister's life. I said, I thought that when we got married, your family became mine and my family became yours. Why are you defending that man so much? What about your sister? She didn't respond and hasn't talked to me since. I tried to explain to her that it was the right thing to do, but she wouldn't listen. Finally, I said, fine, stay angry, and if you want to divorce me, go ahead. Now, I feel like I may have ruined my marriage and don't know if what I did was truly the right thing. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. If I were you, I would sleep with one eye open. Your wife has no moral standards. I truly have been thinking about this, that she might just be... But I love and trust my wife, and I was thinking she wanted me to not tell her because my sister-in-law is pregnant, and women knows how stressful pregnancy and after pregnancy is. And she might have thought that she needs support from her husband? I don't know. Nothing here makes sense to me. There was nothing for me to suspect of her cheating on me. You know what else would cause your pregnant sister-in-law stress? Getting an STD from her cheating husband. You've done the right thing. Sounds like your wife supports cheater and that should be worrying to you. Not the a-hole. I've thought about it, and I am concerned. But I think she asked me not to tell her because my sister-in-law is pregnant, and it would cause her more stress. That's just my guess. But the truth is, if I hide it and support my wife, I'm in the wrong. If I tell her the truth after she gives birth, I'm still wrong. If I hide it forever, I'm still wrong. So what am I supposed to do? Cover for the betrayer and not help my family? even if my wife is angry at me, and I'll probably lose her if I haven't lost her already. I'm surprised your wife wouldn't tell her sister. So am I. What I think is that no matter how strained both sisters' relationship is, at least a sibling would have the back of their sibling, especially when they are pregnant. But she didn't even try to help her sister, and angry at me. I am like, WTF? Is this really the woman I got married to? Now for the update. It's been a few days since I told my wife's sister that her husband is cheating. Just to clarify for all the people questioning me, no, I am not in love with my sister-in-law. I don't have any inappropriate relationship or feelings for her. I respect her and she's family. Yesterday, I asked my wife why she was upset and why she didn't want me to reveal the truth to her sister. I know they don't get along, but they're still siblings. My wife said it wasn't our place to interfere. I asked if she was okay with her sister being cheated on. She said she wasn't, but that I'd ruin their marriage with my stupidity. She said her sister is pregnant and the child needs his father, and so does the wife. I was so shocked when she said that. Like, what? I asked her, if I were to cheat on you, would you forgive me? She said yes. I also asked if, hypothetically, she ever cheated on me, would she hide it from me? She also said yes. I was stunned and asked her if she understood what she was saying. She said, yes, and I am confident. Just because you slept with someone else doesn't mean everyone else has to suffer and break the family. I was speechless, and then told her I had also sent my sister-in-law money. She started yelling at me, saying I shouldn't have helped her, knowing that she doesn't like her sister. I replied that if that's how she felt, maybe we should just divorce. She got angry, shouted, fine, and began packing her bags. I tried my best to stop her, telling her that I love her and that I was only doing what I thought was right. No one should have to suffer betrayal like this. She argued that it wasn't the right time. I asked, so when should we tell her the truth? After she gives birth? Because that would worsen her postpartum depression. Or years after? She'll just blame us. My wife said we should have kept quiet and left it alone. I tried so hard to stop her, but she wouldn't listen and left. I've tried to contact her parents and friends, but none of them know where she is. They instead started questioning me, saying that as her husband, I should have taken care of her and should know where she is. I even visited my brother-in-law's place to confirm my suspicions, but I didn't see her car or any of her belongings there. I hate that I'm being blamed for simply telling the truth, and my wife left me without a second thought. I was so frustrated that today I called my sister-in-law and told her she could stay at my place because I'm going to my parents, and my wife left me with no one knowing where she is. She said she'd try talking to her parents, but later called back to say they didn't know where she was either. I told her to focus on herself and come stay at my place instead of spending all her money on temporary accommodations. So now, I'm at my parents' house and my sister-in-law is at my home. Maybe I'm being petty, but I can't stand that my wife left me without a second thought. I don't know if she's cheating or has cheated, or if she would ever truly betray me and her own sister because of family feuds. But one thing is for sure, I can't trust my wife anymore. She hurt me deeply. I'm sorry, Opie. The way your wife speaks on the subject of cheating is concerning, especially that she would hide it from you. If I were in your shoes, I won't be able to trust her either. How she doesn't look at cheating on your significant other as a huge deal breaker is beyond me. Some couples can forgive and move past it, but not all. The baby's father can still be in his/her life. I'm sorry you're hurting and going through this. Hugs. Yeah, I feel like she isn't even the woman I married. She's like a completely different person. Maybe the comments about I married a wrong sister were right. Haha. In any case, I loved her and I still do and will do so for a foreseeable future. So I'll just back out of relationship and dating scene. And even I don't trust my wife at this point. Your wife was mad because she's most likely the one having the affair with your brother-in-law. And if it's not with a brother-in-law, it's definitely with someone else where you think she's been, hiding at her affair partner's place. Your wife told you she would cheat on you and would have no remorse to it, and would also not tell you. What in that tells you she hasn't already done that? She sympathizes with cheating probably because she's been in that position and sees it in herself as no big deal. You obviously feel differently. Think on this for a while before you go groveling and begging for her back. I think she just told you a really big secret, and expects you to understand and forgive her. At this point, I would just contact her parents and say you need an address for her to be served. This is not a marriage where your partner storms off and disappears with no contact. Next story. Am I the a-hole for considering divorcing my wife because she told my sister's husband that my sister cheated on him? My wife and I have been married for 14 years and we have 3 kids. My wife has always been a bit snoopy and nosy, but it didn't really bother me until recently. My sister and I have always been close since childhood, and we tell each other everything. Many years ago, my sister confessed to me that she had an emotional affair, which lasted for a month. She was in tears and very remorseful. Her marriage was going through a difficult time. We talked a lot about it, and after those conversations, my sister joined therapy, became sober, and she's now living a very happy life with her husband. My wife never knew about this because I've always made sure to keep my conversations private. However, a couple of weeks ago, I was a bit drunk and got lazy about being careful while talking to my sister. My sister was talking about how that was a turning point in her life and how she couldn't be happier now. My wife overheard this conversation and asked me about it the next day. I told her it was none of her business, but she kept saying it was unfair to my sister's husband and that he deserved to know. I told my wife to let it go, but instead, she called my sister's husband directly and told him what she'd overheard. I was shocked and really angry at her. Now my sister's marriage is on the rocks, and her husband is seriously considering divorce. I told my wife that if my sister goes through a divorce, then I would go through a divorce too. She was shocked and apologized repeatedly, saying she would never do this again, but I don't think this is repairable. She's now begging me to at least consider our kids and how disruptive a divorce would be. The atmosphere at our house is really tense now, and I'm no longer sleeping in the same room as my wife. I refuse to talk to her or eat the breakfast or dinner she prepares. Instead, I go out to eat. My wife has cried a few times, but I think those are empty tears. Am I the a-hole for considering divorce? Now for the comments. It's weird that you're the one threatening divorcing her, since she would be the one divorcing you because you're a huge a-hole. I'm going to be an emotional terrorist to my children by removing myself from breakfast and dinner and leaving them confused and scared because they can tell I'm fighting with her mom. Dude can't even keep appearances for the sake of the kids. You don't even have to speak with her. Just show up and eat the freaking food for their sake until you either decide to patch things up or file for divorce. This part, dude doesn't even care about his kid's emotional state. Just him, his sister, and his own invalid feelings. What kind of husband supports a cheater? Covers it up? What kind of dad treats his kids' mothers like that in front of them? All of this over a month-long emotional affair years ago? It wasn't years ago to the cheated on husband. He just found out, so it's fresh. Things get really gray when you're talking about a short emotional affair. What does it even mean in this context? She realized she was developing feelings for a coworker and texting him too much, so she cut contact with him and went on to have a far happier marriage? Going back on some of that stuff is thought crime level nonsense. I'm okay with labeling something an emotional affair when they're sending "I love you and can't wait to leave my husband for you" texts, and he finds out about it. But it's kinda different when she realizes she's doing the wrong thing, then shuts it down on her own before anything physical happens. Like, what's next? Leave her for having a dream about someone else? We all have thoughts and feelings, and sometimes they wander. The thing that should matter is what you choose to do with those feelings. She chose to discard them and stay with her husband. That seems like something I wouldn't hold against her. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she's ruining my wedding by demanding I invite her ex? So my wedding is coming up in a few weeks, and it's supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I, 28 female, have been planning it for months with my fiancé, 30 male. Everything is coming together except for my sister, 26 female. A bit of backstory. My sister and her ex, Jake, were together for several years. They broke up about 6 months ago, and it was a pretty messy breakup. She was devastated, and I've been there for her through all of it. I understand that she's still struggling, and I've tried my best to be supportive. The problem started when she told me she wanted me to invite Jake to my wedding. I was taken aback because, well, things ended badly between them, and she's clearly not over it. I told her from the start that I wasn't comfortable inviting him, especially since it was such a painful breakup for her. She seemed okay with that at first, but then she started pushing me harder. She said it wasn't fair for her to pretend everything is fine and that I was being insensitive to her feelings. I tried explaining that this is my wedding and I want it to be a day focused on joy, not uncomfortable situations. But now she's really upset. Then it escalated. She told me that if Jake wasn't invited, she wouldn't come to the wedding at all. She says it's too important for her to have him there for closure. I get that she's going through something tough, but this is my wedding, and I don't want it overshadowed by old drama. I've tried to be firm and said she could either come and respect my decision or not come at all. But now she's telling the rest of the family that I'm being selfish and prioritizing a wedding day over her emotional well-being. It's tearing me up, but I really feel like I'm standing my ground. I'm now questioning if I'm being too harsh. I know weddings are a big deal, but it feels like she's making this all about her, and it's not the time or place to do that. So, am I the a-hole? Say, okay, you're off the guest list, and then hang up. The wedding is not the venue for her drama. Whatever you do, don't keep reasoning with her and negotiating with her. She's out. Invite your nice colleague or neighbor instead. She needs to stop being this pathetically desperate for a guy who doesn't want her. It would be weird for Jake to even want to come, but let's say he did and does go. Sister is probably imagining a reconciliation happening because it is a wedding and love is in the air, and she has watched one too many Hallmark movies. But what is going to happen in reality is, he will either come with someone which will set her off. He will start hitting on the bridesmaids, which will set her off, or he will spend the night actively trying to avoid her while she chases him around like a lovesick puppy, which will then set her off. No matter what, she will end up ruining the wedding. Not coming is always a choice, but not coming because an ex won't be there is delusional and sad. I hope you have a beautiful, drama-free wedding and a resounding not the a-hole. I think she's hoping Jake will reach out to her to figure out going together as each other's +1 if he gets the invite, possibly triggering a reconciliation. That level of delusion needs serious help though. Not the a-hole. If she wants closure, she calls him like an adult and have a last dinner with him. Your wedding is not a place for her private dramas. Your in-laws don't have to be witnesses of this. She is disrespectful towards you, but she is more towards your fiancé, like it's not his big day too. It's not about your family, it's about two families joining. Your sister makes it about her. So, it's absolutely her right to not come to the wedding, but it will be her fault, not yours. She doesn't want closure. She's hoping the romantic setting of a wedding will be the perfect place to rekindle their relationship.